Welcome to Manhwa Recaps, spoilers ahead, watch out, and take care. We see a man saying he won, while we see a game with a clear screen. The man is excited he finally beat the game, and we see his chatters are excited too. We learn the game is called Protect the Empire, a tower defense and dungeon offense hybrid game. And after 10 years, he's been the only person to win the game. He talks to his chat, and tells them no matter how difficult a game is, he will beat it. The man is a streamer named Retro Taku who specializes in high difficulty retro games. He receives a chatter mentioning the death of the saint, and Retro Taku mentions how the viewers bonded with the characters, and wished everyone would live through the final battle, but everyone except the main character Lucas, died. But his goal wasn't a no-death run, but just to complete it. He mentions how even after the game was beaten, Lucas just stands still over the final boss's corpse, on top of the corpses of monsters, and allies alike. He says even though it's a game, Lucas looks so lonely standing there. It shows the end screen, and one of the chatters says, the dev should reward him because he beat the game when everyone else complained about the difficulty of the game. Taku says he doesn't need anything like that, it's fine because he had fun. And the chatters mock him for faking being modest. Taku mentions how their website's already been taken down, and there's no sequel to the game. So there's no way they'd reach out to him. But he receives a notification from the developer of the game, and he is surprised. All of his chatters are surprised, and the developer says first, you have my gratitude, because he thought nobody would succeed, but I'm relieved after seeing you beat the game, and I'm happy there's still hope for us. This confuses Taku, and he wonders if they're making a sequel. The developer then says, you've proven your skills, so come to this place and help us. Taku wonders if this is a scam, because there's no way the developer would have come to his stream in the first place, and decides to kick the man out of his stream. He says Mr. so-called developer, but is interrupted by his screen distorting, and everything goes blurry for Taku. He wonders what's happening and falls unconscious, wondering if played for too long. The screen thanks him for playing, and it shows some giant things crashing, creating a loud noise. This wakes up Taku, and he screams, wondering what the noise was. He sees in front of him a wall has been melted by some acid, and he screams, wondering what is going on. The debris begins to fall, and he cowers on the floor. He's overwhelmed by the smell of gunpowder, and is shocked when a cannon fires in front of him. He looks around and sees a flag, and an army of soldiers, and that he's on top of a castle wall. After seeing all of this, he wonders what's going on again, and wonders if he's in the middle of a war. One of the soldiers notices he's awake, and they rush to him, saying, Your Majesty, are you alright? This scares Taku, and he crawls backward, thinking it's an enemy, and yelling to stay back. The soldier drops his weapon and gets on his hands and knees, apologizing, and asking for him to spare his life. Taku wonders what the hell is wrong with the man, and as he tells him to calm down, he sees a giant acid ball being hurled at him. It lands on the man, knocking Taku onto the floor. He struggles to lift himself up, and when Taku looks over, he sees people being melted and screaming. Another soldier yells out, saying the stormtroopers are coming close, and to prevent them from climbing up. One of the men instantly dies, and we see his impaled corpse get flung over the wall. The man's arm gets sent flying, and lands in front of Taku, splashing him in blood, which forces the situation to sink in as reality. He witnesses more soldiers being impaled, their lifeless bodies just drop to the floor. And Taku wonders what's going on beyond the wall, and he sees a spider monster climb over and begins to crawl at him. Some soldiers notice this and try to help, but are instantly killed, paralyzing Taku with fear. He wonders if it's a dream as the spider approaches him, because the situation makes no sense to him. The monster slashes down at him, and Taku thinks dying like this doesn't make any sense. But a man with blonde hair appears, and tells him, Your Highness, being in denial is such a boring response. And we see the man pulls out his sword, and imbues it with aura, and instantly kills the spider. He asks Taku if he's okay, and asks if he's hurt. Taku says he looks familiar, and recognizes him as Lucas. Lucas says it seems he's hurt his head, but he's glad because he finally called him by his name, and mentions how he's never called him by his name before. Taku wonders if it's really Lucas, and realizes that would mean he's inside of the game he just beat while streaming. As he looks at the battlefield, he realizes he is fucked, because of how difficult the game is. He sees an entire army of spiders swarming at him, and he is utterly shocked. It shows the spiders shooting acid balls bombarding the walls, and Taku wonders why he entered the game. Lucas grabs Taku and tells him the enemies are called the Black Spider Army, and that they don't move after sunset. And even though the front wall is about to collapse, they just need to hold on until then. Taku wonders why Lucas is protecting him, and wonders who he is in-game. It cuts to sunset, and we see soldiers being carried out, and treated. Lucas begins to talk to Taku as he overlooks the spiders' corpses beneath him, and Taku asks him when and where they are currently. Lucas tells him the year, and that they are at Fortress City, also known as the front base of Crossroad. Taku remembers what tomorrow will be, as it's a familiar date and location. And reveals that it's actually the tutorial of the game and that he must be called Ash. He asks Lucas if that's his name, and once he says yes, he becomes scared. Taku explains that he's the third crown prince of the empire, and the worst commander, and that in the tutorial, he met the worst ending. His full name is Ash Bonehatter Everblack. Taku explains again that he's the only person to have cleared the hardest difficulty, which combines Hell and Sage modes together. Sage mode just autosaves, so you can't go back. And that the tutorial is an impossible stage, that was made to never be beaten, and that the story starts with Lucas escaping alone. And the Black Spider Army appears later in the game, so how is he expected to kill them at the start? He slaps himself and says that he's cleared it before, and if he uses all of his knowledge, there has to be a way, but after hyping himself up, he realizes he's fucked. He can see from the stage info screen that there are thousands of spiders, and they are all high level, and even the wall's durability is low now. The only weapon he can use currently is a cannon, and he begins to think of a solution. He mentions if it's Sage mode, he can't load, so he has to find the best way possible every time. And since he's been playing the game, he's realized there's always an option to survive. And he looks through the info for something to use. He runs out of his room screaming for Lucas, and tells him to call for his escort troop. Lucas asks why, and he tells him he's found a way to break through the situation. We see him sitting down, and begins talking to everyone. He recognizes all of their faces, but he's never seen them live. There's Lily, Ken, and Damien. He asks why Damien is curled up, and they explain he lost a friend. Taku remembers that from the start, Damien was debuffed, and even if he's an important healer, he wasn't useful. He changes the topic and tells everyone what their roles are. He explains Lily is a fire mage, but he gives her the position of tank. This confuses her, and he tells Ken, who is actually a tank, that he's going to infiltrate the enemy camp, and tells Damien he'll be their sniper, and he orders Lucas to maintain the front line. Ken yells and asks if he's taking this seriously, but he understands that it sounds like a crazy plan. But explains that this stage is impossible to clear with normal means, but he has to use crazy means. He glares at Ken and asks if he's disobeying him, the son of the Emperor, and the Supreme Commander. Everyone looks tense, and Ken is visibly scared. Taku stands up and pulls out his blade, stabbing Lily in the shoulder. And mentions how while he's in Ash's body, he has to be crazier. Ken thinks to himself that the prince is a complete lunatic, and there's no way they can trust him. We see the knife inside of Lily's shoulder begin to catch flame, and everyone is shocked. And Taku explains that the tutorial characters have a hidden specialty that contrasts with their role, because it was put in as a joke. Taku asks Lily if she was cut by metal before by some goblins, and after that, she gained fiery skin. Taku explains that it changes the body to flames to avoid physical attacks, and as long as she has mana, she can avoid attacks, and asks her if he's wrong. He explains how in the game, you can't use her quality, but this isn't a game. And for an impossible stage, there's no choice but for him to cheat. And he curses whoever sent him here. He apologizes to Lily for stabbing her, and she asks how he knew about it. He tells her it isn't important, and he calls Ken's name out. And he explains Ken was a thief when he was younger, and Ken asks how he knew. Taku says how he knows isn't important, and it's about what he can do because of it. Taku explains that he can conceal himself whenever he wants, and nobody will notice him. Ken stays silent, and Taku threatens him with a knife, and Ken says he can do it. He puts the knife down and approaches Damien. He explains he's the most important piece, and asks Damien about his eyes, and explains that's why he can remember his friend's death so well. Damien recalls his friend's death, and begins to cry. Asking why he was brought here, asking if there was some noble goal, or if their lives are nothing but entertainment. Taku tells him to resent him, but his friend gave his life to save him, and asks if he's just going to waste it, and that he needs to take revenge. Kill the spider, then take revenge on Ash. He asks Damien if he wants to kill the spiders, and he says yes, and he asks if he wants to kill him too, and Damien says yes. Taku says good, and promises if he gets out of this alive, he'll die by his hands. Lucas yells, and Taku says if the plan fails, they all die anyway, but he promises to die by Damien's hands, and gives him his word, so at least for tomorrow, just follow his orders. Taku explains that he'll use Damien's resentment toward him as fuel. And he tells them he won't make excuses, and due to his judgment, the army is on the brink of annihilation, but if they stick to his plans, they can drive the monsters out and will win. So just this once, follow and trust him. And we see them all looking determined. It cuts to the next day, and they are atop the walls preparing for the Black Spider army. The soldiers bang the drums to notify everyone, and we see Taku beside a cannon. And the spider army begins to rush in, and he explains the plan. While the members buy time, he'll find the queen, and after that, they'll shoot her with the mana cannon. But the problem is the location. She orders the army from far away, so it's not visible to normal people, and he wonders if it's possible. And he opens a window while grinning, saying it is. We see a giant blue barrier extend outward from the castle, and it's revealed to be Ash's unique skill. It's the ability to view the area in minimap form. And he was surprised by the weak stats, but is happy he's got this skill at least. He looks at the mini-map to find where the boss is, but is surprised it isn't on the map. It cuts to Taku giving Ken stamina potions, and Ken preparing to leave the gate. And we see Lily scared, waiting inside of her spot. And Lucas commanding the troops. He sees Taku's oh shit face, and mistakes it as him being ready, so he orders the soldiers to fire. We see them kill some spiders, and Lucas gives him a thumbs up. Taku focuses up to try to find the boss, and realizes she has to be in the back. He sees the rear group on the minimap, and asks Damien if he can see them. He asks if he can spot the queen, and Damien focuses and describes the queen. Taku gets the cannon in position, and he orders Damien to hold the cannon. Damien is scared, but Taku tells him it's okay to miss. And that he'll take responsibility. Taku says that all Damien has to do is pull the trigger and avenge his friend. Damien pulls the lever, and we see the cannon charge up and fire. We see a massive beam of mana launch from the cannon, and we see the ball fly over the enemy army toward the rear. And we see a giant explosion, and the soldiers say the target was hit. They compliment Damien, and we learn Damien has a trait that means he can never miss. Taku notices the monsters are still moving, and he grabs a monocular, and he spots the queen being protected by the spiders. We see her let out a scream, and the spiders begin to change their tactic, and begin to zerg where Lily is. It cuts to Ken hiding behind a tree with only one stamina potion left, and the spider army is running past him, and he wonders if he should run away. It cuts back to Damien saying it's been a direct hit, and the queen is still alive after taking a cannon shot. Taku explains how the spider queen is generally pretty weak individually, but the tutorial stage queen is different. He has no information about her, and wonders if she has an unkillable status. One of the soldiers yells about how the cannon is reaching its limit, so it only has a few shots left, 3 to be exact. This heavily worries Taku, and he understands killing it with 3 shots isn't possible. And that Damien's eyes are being strained, and wonders if Damien will last. One of the soldiers yells that a demolisher is coming, and we see a giant spider crab rushing toward the already damaged wall. Taku yells for everyone to focus it, but it has no effect, and the wall gets smashed through by Chungus. We see the rest of the spiders run through after the demolisher, and Lucas and Taku give everyone their orders. Taku tells them they have to kill the queen, and we see Damien launch another attack, visibly straining his eyes. It cuts to Lucas holding his ground against the spider army, saying they must defend Taku. And Taku begins to get frightened as he watches the soldiers die, and the death count begins to climb. He wasn't aware when he was playing it as a game, but actually hearing the screams of the soldiers makes the reality sink in. He begins to panic and cannot think of a way out. We see Ken screaming to draw the spider's attention, and he runs away while they follow him. He hides behind a rock and activates his stealth, but he doesn't have the health required for it, and is surrounded by the spiders. We see them tear him to pieces. F in the comments for Ken. Taku realizes his lapse of judgment is what cost Ken his life. Not only Ken, but everyone else is losing their lives because of him. And how in game he always used sacrifices to get what he needed, because that's how the game is. But now he understands the weight of his actions. And he angrily yells at the spiders, but he knows they won't stop because of a scream. He sees Lucas killing one of the giant spiders, and Taku realizes that the only way to stop the monsters is by killing them. One of the soldiers tells him the fourth shot is ready, and Taku asks Damien if he's ready, and we see Damien is bleeding from his eyes, but says yes. They shoot the shot, and we watch it hurl toward the queen, hitting her directly as she screams, but it isn't enough to kill her. They fall to their knees, realizing the attacks aren't working, and because they only have one shot left. Taku wonders if this is truly the end, even though the cannon is about to break, and the front line is broken. Damien can't open his eyes, and he wonders if there's any hope. One of the soldiers yells out that she's definitely been damaged, and he admires the scout for being loyal to his role. And the scout says one more shot can kill it, but an acid rock hits the scout. Lucas screams out for Taku, and we see him falling from the tower because it's been broken. He blacks out, but is woken up by a light. This light is revealed to be Lucas blocking debris for him. Lucas asks if he's okay, and begins to puke up blood. Lucas asks if he remembers, and says it's been 20 years since then. But Taku doesn't know what he's talking about because he's not really Ash. Lucas mentions how on his first day as his bodyguard, he spoke to him, and said he can't become the emperor, but he will become the greatest man in the world. So Lucas must become the best knight in the world. Lucas mentions that those words deeply motivated him, and he tells Taku he believes in him. And he falls under the weight of the rubble. Taku pulls his unconscious body out, and tells him to hang on, because he's the hero, so he cannot afford to die here. He begins to analyze the situation, and he sees Damien and the other soldiers beside the cannon. And he wonders how they are still alive, and where the spiders are. He hears Lily calling for him. As she holds back the spiders, she tells him it isn't over yet, and we see she is impaled by the spiders. Taku yells out to her, and she says she can't hold out for much longer. She says soon, the monsters will break through, and we don't have time, so hurry. She says don't make my death worthless. Taku yells out for them to prepare the next shot, but one of the soldiers says that the cannon has surpassed its limit. And if it shoots, then it will explode. Taku says it's better for them to roll the dice even if they die in flames. The soldier asks how he plans to aim because they can't see outside, and that the cannon stand is gone. Taku says they'll hold the cannon with their hands, and there's no need to aim, they just need Damien to shoot. Taku approaches Damien, and tells him this is the last time he needs to shoot, and to please push himself once more. Damien says no matter what he does, nothing changes, and asks what the point is. Taku says if they hit it again, it will die, and Damien says that's not what he meant. Even if they kill the queen, then what changes? Because the world always takes things from him, and that he wants to stop. He doesn't want to live like this. Taku interrupts him by yelling his name, asking if he thinks the world is unreasonable, and even if he overcomes an obstacle, would he still be living in hell? Damien says yes, and Taku grabs him by his collar, yelling at him for saying obvious things. And that nothing goes his way either, but that's life. And asks if he's just going to sit and wait to die. And that they have to keep fighting until they die. And that he plans to struggle and fight until the end. He tells Damien if he wants to die so badly, then to kill himself, but if he's too much of a coward, then to become his trigger. He tells him to stop looking for his dead friend, and the only thing he needs to work for his commander, and that he's his chess piece, his key, and that's all he needs him to be. Taku activates his commander skill, and gives Damien an order to blast the monster's face off. Damien says he'll do it, and one of the soldiers says the cannon is loaded. But there's no way to cool the barrel down. Taku tells him to move, and says he'll hold the cannon. The soldier tells him that it's too hot, and it'll be way worse than an average burn. Taku says it's better to die that way. And asks Damien if he's ready. Damien says he can't see or feel his hands, and Taku reassures him it's okay. We see the cannon begin to heat up, and Taku begins to scream in pain from the heat of the cannon. We see him hold it up, and the soldiers begin to help him by grabbing onto the cannon. They all lift it up toward a demolisher, and Taku yells out for Damien. We see Damien's eyes begin to bleed again, and he's ordered to shoot, so he pulls the lever. We see the cannon begin to charge with mana, and it fires off a massive blast of mana. We see the beam propel the ball, and Taku just keeps repeating for it to hit, as he begins to pass out. Taku says it's an impossible task, they had to shoot at an enemy they cannot see, and there's no way it would hit. But we see the ball curve in the air, because it's ignoring the factors that limited the shot, including all of the monsters in the army. Because the shot's target is predetermined. It hits directly with the Spider Queen's face, only leaving a massive explosion behind. Taku begins to remember his first chatter in his stream, and we see he was happy to receive a chat, but didn't remember what he responded with. He opens his eyes, screaming, and we see him bandaged up, surprised he's alive. Lily tells him to rest more because the burn is deep and will take time to heal. She tells him he's slept for 4 days, and she thought he wasn't going to wake up. He's happy when he understands he survived, and she explains the last shot killed the queen, and the army stopped moving instantly. And that they've won. He looks out his window seeing the soldiers moving the dead, and burning spider corpses. Lily explains the injuries he suffered, and that even after he gets healed, he'll still have scars. And he says scars are a cheaper price to pay than losing his life, and he asks Lily how she is, and notices she's in a wheelchair. She explains she ran out of mana, and a spider scratched her back, but now she can't move her lower body. She tells him not to worry, and she's just thankful that she's alive. And she explains the only survivors are 9 people in total, and Taku is visibly upset, and wonders if there was another way, a tactic that he didn't think of for everyone to live. Lily comforts him by telling him he isn't a god, and that there was no way to save everyone. Taku explains from the start he's the one who dragged the soldiers here, and she says that nobody expected the monsters to move in hordes, because they haven't for decades. And he shouldn't be so harsh on himself. Lucas barges into the room, while crying, he yells about how happy he is. He asks him if he's hurt, and that he can bring Damien over. Taku asks if Lucas is okay, and Lucas says his main strength is being tough. Lucas holds up a manifest for all of the soldiers who died, and says there are many he couldn't find the remains of, but they've recovered the ones they could find. Taku asks where they gathered the remains, and says that he'll go see him. On his way there, he meets Damien, and is surprised that Damien was healing everyone after what happened, and tells him if he wants, he'll give him the money to retire, and that he can do what he wishes now. Damien mentions how Taku called him his trigger, and Damien says he wants to know the origins of the monster, and why his friend died. So he asks to follow Taku's path. Taku says okay, and to pay respect to the dead, they needed a priest. We see them holding a funeral for the deceased. Taku acknowledges there wasn't a better strategy, and that he chose a plan and executed it. That this is his result, and he will carry the consequences. Taku tells Lucas, after the funeral is over, to recover the remains and transfer them to an empty field in the west part of the crossroad, and to bury them there. He plans to build a cemetery where the memorial facility was in the game. Taku says that every year on, the last day of February, will be a day they spend honoring their sacrifices. Taku tells Lucas he won't fail twice, and it's time to go back to their headquarters. It cuts to 3 days after, and we see they have a caravan heading toward the main camp. We see Taku inside one of the carriages, extremely bored, but we see he has a job selection available. Taku mentions how after level 5, you get to choose a job. We see his stats have barely gone up, but the interesting thing is that he can choose any job in the game. But one of the classes is one that he's never seen before, and he wonders if it's a hidden class that's a prize for clearing the hardest difficulty. He mentions his skill is useless in the start, and that it's risky to choose a job he doesn't know about. Lucas interrupts him and says they are close to Crossroad, and Taku looks out the carriage window to see a giant fortress wall. He explains it's at the south end of the world, and it's to stop monsters from emerging from the southern area called Black Lake. And it used to be a significant area, but now instead of soldiers, it's run by mercenaries, old soldiers, rookies, and people who've failed in society. And mercenaries were hired regardless of skill level, because the Empire just needed a meat shield. But after the constant development of commercial buildings, the area has caused people to refer to the fortress as Fortress City. We see Taku's carriage go down the main city street, but he realizes the atmosphere is horrible. He understands that after so many people died, they're going to view him poorly, but he's prepared something for this. The residents see a cart full of magic gems, and Taku explains how, right now, their trust in him is 0, but he knows how to get them to like him. And that is by abusing money, to buy their trust. They arrive at the Lord's Manor, and Taku is surprised by how big the house is. One of the attendants bursts out of the door. While yelling, he runs up to Taku and says he was very worried about him. Taku explains the man is named Ader, and that he's an NPC that manages the city, and handles administrative tasks. They head inside, and Ader says he's prepared the bath, and dinner for him. Taku tells Lucas to go rest, and Ader guides him to the bath. Ader says once he's in the water, his fatigue will wash away. Taku thanks him, and says he can go rest, but Ader tells him he is incredible, and calls him Retro Taku.